Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video we'll be making an elastic waist pants with pockets and rope. Here are my tools and the measurements you'll be needing for this elastic waist pants. For the sake of this tutorial, I'll be drafting on a pattern paper, but you can work directly on your fabric. To begin, I'll be coming down from the top of my pattern paper by 1.5 inches. I'll mark that point across, square it out with my ruler, and that will be my start point. And from here, I'll be taking the rest of my measurements, starting with my waist to hip measurement at 9 inches. So from the start point, I'm going down by 9 inches, marking that point across. Then I'll go on to square it with my ruler, and that will become my hip line. The next measurement I'll be taking is my crotch depth, and for me that's 12 inches. And if you don't know how to measure your crotch depth, just use this picture as a guide. So from the start point, I'm coming down by 12 inches, marking that point across, squaring it out with my ruler, and that line will become my crotch line. The next horizontal measurement I'll be taking will be the full length of this elastic pants, and I'll be going with 43 inches plus 2 inches for hemming allowance, making it 45 inches. Now, because this pattern paper is not long enough to reach 45 inches, I'll just go ahead to measure from the start point to wherever it reaches, mark that point across, and then square it out with my ruler. Then I'll go on to indicate the number of inches I have so I can extend it when cutting onto fabric. Okay, so now that I'm done marking my horizontal lines, it's time to shape the side of the trousers. So on the start line, which is also my waistline, I'll be coming in by 1.5 inches. Then along the hip line, I'll be coming in by half an inch. And finally, along the hemline, I'll be coming in by 1 inch. So after marking these 3 points, I'm going to connect all of them using my ruler. I'll begin by connecting the waistline to the hip line like so. Then I'll connect the hip line to the hemline. Okay, so now that I'm done with that, I'll move on to insert the rest of my measurements. Now, because this pant has an elastic waist, instead of marking a quarter of my waist circumference along the waistline, I'll be marking a quarter of my hip circumference along the waistline. So from this point right here, I'm going in by a quarter of my hip circumference, and to that measurement, I'll be adding 1 inch for allowance. The next thing to do is to connect the waistline to the crotch line. And because I'm connecting them in a straight line, I'll be taking the measurements I have from here to the end, which is 13.5, and I'm marking that same 13.5 on this line as well. Then I'll go on to connect these 2 points in a straight line like so. Next, I'm going to be extending the crotch line so I can mark my crotch extension. And from my crotch extension, I'll be going with 2.5. You can use less if you're on the smaller side or more if you're on the bigger side. So I'm marking 2.5 from that vertical line. I'll also be marking a quarter of an inch from that vertical line along the hip line like so. And then using my French curve, I'll be blending these 2 points back into the line. So you can see the way I'm placing my French curve, making sure it's touching the 2 points, and I'm blending them back into the line. Next, I'll be taking the measurements I have here from the crotch extension to the end of my paper. I'll go on to subtract 3 inches from that measurement and mark that on the hemline. After which, I'll go on to connect that point to meet the crotch extension in a straight line. And when I'm done with that, I'll be moving on to work on my waistline. And to do that, I'll be coming down from the start point by 1 inch on this side. After which, you can connect it in a slant to the start point on this other side. But for me, I'll be coming up from the start point by half an inch before connecting it, because it sits better on my waist when I do it this way. So I'm just going in with my ruler to connect the 2 points in a slant like so. And there is my front waistline. Now I won't be adding seam allowances to this pattern because I want to use it to cut out the back. But when cutting onto fabric, I'll be adding half an inch allowance along the waistline to attach the band, 1 inch for the side seam allowance, and then half an inch along the crotch area. So guys, I'm done with the front pattern. Now I'm going to cut along the lines. And like I said earlier, I'll be using this piece to cut out the back. So I have here with me a fresh pattern paper that I'll be using for the back pattern, and I came down from the top of my pattern paper by 3 inches before drawing out the start line because I'll be needing the space for the back waistline. I also drew out my hip line, crotch line, and the hem line just like I did for the front. So to begin with the back, I'm going to be shaping the sides of the trousers like I did for the front. So on the start line, I'm coming in by 1.5, on the hip line I'm going in by half an inch, and on the hem line I'll be going in by 1 inch. Next, I'll be connecting all these points together, so I'll start by connecting the start line to the hip line. I made an error with the first line, so just ignore that. Now I'm connecting the hip line to the hem line, and when I'm done with that, I'll be bringing in my front pattern. I'm going to be placing it to match the sides of the back pattern like so. So I'm matching the start line of the front to that of the back. I'm matching the hip lines, crotch lines and hem lines as well. I'll go on to pin it down so it doesn't move, and then move on to work on the back waistline. So to create the back waistline, I'll be coming up from the start point on this side by 1.5 inches. I'll mark that point and then connect it to meet this side of the front pattern. So I'm going in with my ruler to connect that point to meet the waistline on this side of the front pattern like so. Then I'll go on to mark the exact measurement I have for the waistline on the front pattern on this new line. When I measured, I had 12 inches, so I'm going to be marking 12 inches on this line. So to that measurement, I'll be adding the crotch extension for the front pattern. Remember, I had 2.5 inches for the crotch extension of the front pattern, so I'm just adding 2.5 inches to that 12 inches. I'll go on to extend the line and then connect it downwards to the crotch extension like so. Next, I'll move over to the crotch line to mark 2.5 inches for my back crotch extension. So I'm just extending that line. And remember, for the front pattern, we came out by 1/4 of an inch along the hip line. So I'll be doing the same for the back. And then using my French curve, I'm going to connect these 2 points to the vertical line. And finally, I'll be coming out by 1 inch from this side of the front pattern. Then I'll go ahead to connect this point to the crotch extension. I mistakenly filmed in portrait mode, but I'm simply connecting the crotch extension to the hem. So that's it for the back pattern. I'll just go on to cut along those lines. And when I'm all done, I'll be taking away the front pattern and then I'm going to indicate that this pattern is for the back. I'll also be adding my seam allowances like I'll be doing for the front when cutting onto fabric. So this is the fabric I'll be using to create this elastic pants. It's a crepe fabric and I have 2 yards and 1/4. So I've gone ahead to cut my fabric off camera. This is for the back. And I have 2 pieces here. So I gave 1 inch allowance for the side seam, half an inch along the waist, and half an inch on the crotch area as well. I also extended it to give me my full length of 45 inches. And I did the same thing when cutting out the front pieces as well. Now I'll be attaching pockets to these pants, so I went on to cut out 4 rectangular pieces that I'll be using for the pocket. I'll be using 2 on either side, and each of these pieces is 7 inches wide and 10 inches long. So to begin stitching, I'll start by attaching the pockets to the front piece. So this is for the front and I have 2 pieces here, and I'll be bringing 2 of the rectangular pieces that I cut out for the pockets, and I'm going to be placing them under this front piece like so, and I'll be making sure the side and the waistline of the front piece is matching the rectangular pieces. And once they are aligned properly, I'll go on to pin it down. Next, I'll be coming in along the waistline by 3 inches, and then I'll be going down from the waistline by 7 inches. I'll go on to connect the 2 points in a slant, and then I'll go in with my scissors to cut along that line. After cutting, I'll remove the pin and open up the pieces, and this is what it's looking like. Now I'm going to be separating the front pieces and turn them over to the right side, and then I'll be bringing in each of the pocket piece and I'll be placing the right side of the pocket to the right side of the fabric. I'm going to make sure it's aligned along the waist and the sides, and when I'm sure of that, I'll go on to pin it down, and I'll be doing the same for the other side as well. Now I'll be taking this to the machine and I'm going to stitch using 1/4 of an inch, and I'll be stitching following the slant. When I'm done with that, I'm going to open it up to the right side and make a top stitch and then bring it back. So I've done that and here's what it's looking like. First I made a stitch here, then I turned it to the right side and made a top stitch. I did the same for the other side as well and made sure to iron it properly. Now I'll be bringing in the second pocket piece and I'm going to be placing it underneath this front piece like so, making sure the front side is facing up. I'm also aligning the edges to that of the other pocket piece, and I'm going to be taking this to the machine and make a stitch on the pocket pieces alone. So I'm going to be making a stitch only on the pocket pieces and not the main fabric. I'll do the same for the other front piece as well and bring it back to show you. So I'm all done and here's what we have. I've stitched the pocket pieces together and I did the same for the other side as well. And that's it, our pockets have been attached. Now I'm going to be putting the 2 front pieces back together like so, right sides facing each other. And I'm going to stitch along the crotch area using a 1/2 inch sewing allowance, and I'll be doing the same thing for the back as well. So after stitching, here's what we have. The 2 front pieces have been joined together along the crotch area. Now I'm going to be bringing in the back piece and placing on top of this, right sides facing each other. I'm going to be pinning them together so it doesn't move. And then I'm going to match the crotch of the back to that of the front, and I'm going to stitch them together using a 1/2 inch sewing allowance all the way to the hemline. After which I'll go ahead to stitch down the sides using a 1 inch sewing allowance. So guys, I've stitched the front and back pieces together. I also went on to hem the pants, and now it's time to attach the band to the waistline. And to do that, first I'm going to measure around the waist of this pants, and whatever measurement I have here is what I'm going to be using to cut out my band. So when I measured, I had 53.5 inches, but I cut out a band length of 54.5, so I can use the extra 1 inch for joining, and the width of my band is 5 inches. Now I'm going to be folding my band this way, and I'm going to be stitching the open ends together using 1/2 inch sewing allowance. And after doing that, I'll be folding in 1/2 inch on either side of the band. I'll use my iron to press this down before bringing it back to attach to the waistline of the pants. So to attach the band to the waistline, I'll be placing the right side of the band to the wrong side of the fabric. You can see how I'm placing it. I'll go ahead and pin all around the waistline, then take this over to the machine, and I'm going to stitch all around using a 1/2 inch sewing allowance. Then I'll flip the band over to the right side and make a top stitch on the band. So I've made the first stitch, and here's what we have. Now I'm going to turn the band towards the right side, and I'll be making a top stitch, like I said, making sure to sew very close to the end of the band. But before I do that, first I'll be creating the buttonholes that I'll be using to pass the rope. So first I'm marking the center front of the band, then I'll go on to mark 1/2 inch on either side of this point, and that's where I'll be creating the buttonholes. I've also cut out the elastic that I'll be passing through the band. This is a 1 inch wide elastic, and the length is 3 inches shorter than my waist circumference. Okay, so I've made the top stitch and created the buttonholes on either side of the center front like I said I would. And when making the top stitch, I left a 1 inch space that I'll be using to pass my elastic through. So using my safety pin, I'm just passing the elastic through that opening into the casing. I'll just keep passing it until it comes out the other end. Then I'll remove the safety pin and take the elastic to the machine, use a zigzag stitch to hold it together. So I've done that. Now I'm going to send the elastic back into the casing and then close up that opening. So I've done that. I've also gone ahead to open up my buttonhole so I can pass my rope. And for the rope, I just cut out this long piece of fabric, and I'm going to be folding it inwards on either side, and then I'll fold it again. And I'll just take this to the machine and run a straight stitch from one end to another. So I've done that, and here is my rope. I'll go on to use my safety pin and pass this through the hole until it comes out the other end. And that's it, guys. We are done with this elastic waist pant. Now I'm just tying the ends of the rope, and all that's left to do is to give this a good press. So guys, we've come to the end of this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section. Also leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.